My name is Rosanna. I'm 21 years old, and until last week, I thought I had my future mapped out perfectly. 4 years of maintaining a perfect GPA, countless nights, studying until dawn, all for my dream of becoming an engineer. Then I discovered the truth. The $60,000 my parents promised for my education. They secretly emptied it for my brother's extravagant wedding. When I confronted them at our family dinner, my father actually slapped me across the face, shouting that they were already doing so much for me. The worst betrayal wasn't the money, but realizing the people I trusted most never believed in me at all. If you've ever felt betrayed by family, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to follow my journey to independence. Growing up in Lakeside, a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Michigan, I always felt secure in my family's love and support. Our two-story colonial with the white picket fence looked perfect from the outside, just like our family photos that lined the hallway. My brother Jackson is 7 years older than me, and for most of my childhood, I idolized him. He was my protector, my playmate, and sometimes my tormentor, as siblings often are. My parents, David and Margaret Walsh, ran a successful local insurance agency together. They were well respected in our community, active in the local business association, and never missed a school event. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family. But beneath that carefully crafted image were some troubling dynamics I only began to recognize as I got older. My father was traditionally minded when it came to gender roles. He often said things like, Jackson will take over the family business someday, or Rosanna will make some man a wonderful wife. These comments started when I was very young, maybe 6 or 7, but they became more frequent as I entered my teens. Education is important for everyone, my mother would say, but there was always a subtle difference in how they discussed Jackson's future versus mine. When Jackson brought home B's and C's, my father would ruffle his hair and say, "That's my boy keeping things balanced. Too much studying and you miss out on living." But when I brought home straight A's, the response was more measured. "That's nice, dear. Just don't become one of those girls who scares boys away with her brains." I remember clearly the day my parents established my college fund. I was 10 years old and we were having Sunday dinner after church. Jackson was 17 and already talking about which colleges he might attend. "We've been saving for Jackson's education since he was born," my father announced proudly. "And today we're starting a fund for Rosanna too. Education is the key to success." I felt so important included in this adult conversation about the future. My mother added, "If you work hard in school, Rosanna, that money will be there waiting for you when it's time for college." From that day forward, I became even more dedicated to my studies. While other kids complained about homework or tried to skip school, I never missed a day, unless I was seriously ill. My parents had created a clear path: work hard, get good grades, and college would be waiting for me. Throughout elementary and middle school, I maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA. By high school, I was taking every advanced placement course available, serving as president of the science club, and volunteering at the local children's hospital on weekends. My calendar was packed with activities designed to strengthen my college applications. It was during sophomore year of high school that I discovered my passion for engineering. Mr. Rodriguez, my physics teacher, noticed my aptitude for problem solving and suggested I look into engineering programs. "You have a natural talent for seeing how things connect, Rosanna," he told me after class one day. "Engineering needs more women with your kind of analytical mind." That conversation sparked something in me. I began researching engineering programs focusing particularly on biomedical engineering. The idea of designing medical devices that could help people like the children I volunteered with at the hospital became my driving goal. When I shared this newfound passion with my parents, their reactions were tellingly different. "Engineering," my father repeated, his forehead creased. "Isn't that more of a man's field?" "What about nursing or teaching? Those are good careers for women who want families someday." My mother was more diplomatic but equally discouraging. "Those programs are very competitive, sweetie. Maybe keep your options open." Only Jackson seemed genuinely supportive. "Go for it, Ro," he said, using my childhood nickname. "You've always been the smartest one in this family." Looking back, I should have recognized these reactions as warning signs, but I was young and still believe my parents wanted what was best for me. I assumed they were just being protective, worried about me facing disappointment or discrimination in a male-dominated field. Throughout these years, my grandmother Eleanor was my strongest advocate. My mother's mother, she had worked as a bookkeeper during an era when few women had careers. She lived just 20 minutes away and often invited me over for weekend visits. "Your mind is a gift," she would tell me while we baked cookies or tended her garden. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't achieve with it." Grandmother Eleanor was the one who took me to my first Women in STEM conference when I was 16. She bought me books about female engineers and scientists, creating a counterbalance to my parents' subtle discouragement. "Your parents love you," she would say carefully, when I occasionally complained about their lack of enthusiasm for my goals. "But they come from a different time. Sometimes people who love us have trouble seeing beyond the limits they've accepted for themselves." As high school progressed, I noticed more instances of my parents treating Jackson and me differently. When Jackson decided to attend our state university, despite his average grades, my parents threw a huge celebration. They bought him a used car for commuting, even though he planned to live on campus. When I started talking about applying to top engineering programs, the conversation quickly shifted to costs and practicality. "Let's be realistic" became my father's favorite phrase whenever I mentioned schools like MIT or Stanford. Still, I held on to the promise of my college fund. I remembered my parents mentioning specific amounts over the years. "We just added another $5,000 to your college fund," they'd say after a good year at the insurance agency. By my calculations, there should have been at least $60,000 set aside for my education. With that belief firmly in place, I continued pursuing my dreams, unaware that behind the scenes, everything I had worked for was slowly being drained away. The fall of my senior year was a flurry of college applications, essays, and interviews. I applied to 12 schools in total, including 3 Reach schools with top engineering programs, 6 Target schools with strong STEM departments, and 3 safety schools with good academic reputations. When the first acceptance letter came from State University, my parents seemed relieved. "That's wonderful news, honey," my mother said. "And they have a perfectly adequate engineering program. Plus, you could live at home and save money," my father added quickly. But I was waiting for responses from my dream schools. Each day after school, I raced to check the mail, hoping for thick envelopes rather than thin rejections. The day the letter from Massachusetts Institute of Technology arrived, I couldn't contain my excitement. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope in our kitchen, my mother watching with a strained smile. "I got in!" I screamed, jumping up and down. "Mom, I actually got into MIT!" Her response should have been another warning sign. Instead of sharing my excitement, she looked almost pained. "That's nice, dear, but remember those private schools are very expensive." When my father came home and heard the news, his reaction was even more telling. "MIT, all the way in Massachusetts." "That's not practical, Rosanna. Besides, we need to discuss the financial situation." That evening, I tried to have a conversation about my college fund. "I know MIT is expensive, but with the money you've been saving plus scholarships, I think I can make it work. Can we sit down and look at the numbers?" My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. My father cleared his throat. "Let's talk about this another time. We've had a long day." The pattern continued as more acceptance letters arrived. I was accepted to 9 of the 12 schools I applied to, including Stanford and Cornell, along with MIT. Each time my parents' reactions were subdued at best, actively discouraging at worst. Meanwhile, something else was happening in our family that I initially didn't connect to my college prospects. My brother Jackson had proposed to his girlfriend of 2 years, Alexis Patterson. The Pattersons were significantly wealthier than our family. Alexis's father owned a chain of successful car dealerships across the state, and they lived in the most exclusive neighborhood in our town. From the moment the engagement was announced, I noticed a shift in my parents' behavior. Suddenly, appearances became even more important than usual. My mother joined a new gym, started coloring her gray hair, and bought several expensive new outfits. My father traded in his 3-year-old sedan for a luxury car he really couldn't afford. Our comfortable but modest home became a source of apparent embarrassment. "The Pattersons have offered to host the engagement party at their country club," my mother told me excitedly. "We need to make sure we fit in." Wedding planning consumed our household. Every dinner conversation revolved around venue's guest lists and what the Pattersons might think. Jackson and Alexis had set their wedding date for June just after my high school graduation. As my senior year progressed and the deadline for college decisions approached, my anxiety grew. Each time I tried to discuss my college fund with my parents, they found reasons to postpone the conversation. Not now, Rosanna, we're meeting with the wedding planner. Can this wait? We're trying to figure out the rehearsal dinner budget. In March, I made an appointment with my school counselor, Ms. Alvarez, to discuss financial aid options. Have you talked with your parents about your college fund? She asked. I've tried, but they keep avoiding the conversation, I admitted. Ms. Alvarez frowned. That's concerning. The FAFSA requires their financial information, and most aid packages assume a certain level of parental contribution, especially if they've been saving specifically for your education. She helped me prepare some specific questions to ask my parents, and suggested I set a formal time to talk rather than trying to catch them between wedding planning activities. That night, I asked my parents if we could have a family meeting about college the following evening. They reluctantly agreed. When we sat down together, I had a notebook prepared with questions about my fund scholarship opportunities and loan options. We need to make a decision soon, I explained. The deposit deadline for MIT is May 1st, and I need to compare financial aid packages. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Rosanna, we need to be practical here. MIT is over $70,000 a year. That's just not realistic for our family. But what about my college fund? I pressed. You've been saving for years. Plus, I've been offered a $20,000 merit scholarship. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. The financial situation has changed since we started that fund. There have been unexpected expenses. What expenses? The business seems to be doing well. You just bought a new car. I pointed out, frustration building. Don't use that tone with us, young lady, my father snapped. There are financial considerations you don't understand. The conversation ended with nothing resolved. My parents promised to look at the numbers and get back to me, but days passed with no further discussion. Around this time, I also noticed my favorite teacher, Ms. Williams, watching me with concern. After class one day, she asked me to stay behind. Is everything okay, Rosanna? You seem distracted lately. Something about her genuine concern broke through my facade. I explained the situation with my parents, the wedding, and my college uncertainty. Ms. Williams listened carefully before responding. It might be wise to explore all your financial options independently. Don't give up on your dreams yet, but have a backup plan. Her advice prompted me to research additional scholarships and work-study programs. I began applying for every opportunity I could find, still hoping my parents would come through, but increasingly doubtful. The wedding plans, meanwhile, grew more elaborate by the day. I overheard my mother on the phone discussing custom-designed invitations that cost $20 each. My father mentioned taking out a loan to cover the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant. The disconnect between their apparent financial strain regarding my education and their lavish spending on Jackson's wedding became impossible to ignore. Something didn't add up, and I was determined to find out what was really going on. April arrived with rain showers and blooming flowers, but the beauty of spring couldn't lift the growing uneasiness in my heart. With college decision day approaching and still no clear answers from my parents about financial support, I felt increasingly desperate. One Saturday afternoon, my parents were at a cake tasting with Jackson and Alexis, leaving me alone in the house. I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by financial aid letters, trying to piece together how I could possibly afford MIT, even with my partial scholarship. I needed more information about my college fund. How much was actually in it? Was it in a 529 plan or some other type of account? Without these details, I couldn't make an informed decision. My father kept important documents in his home office, a small room off the living room that housed a desk filing cabinet and bookshelf. He had always been clear that this room was his private space, but my need for answers outweighed my respect for his rules. The office door wasn't locked. Inside, everything was meticulously organized. My father was nothing if not methodical. The filing cabinet contained neatly labeled folders, insurance, taxes, house, cars, and one labeled college. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out the college folder. Inside were brochures from Jackson's university days and some information about 529 plans, but nothing with my name on it. Then I noticed another folder labeled Financial Accounts. This thicker folder contained statements from various banks and investment firms. I quickly found statements for an educational savings account in my name. The most recent statement was from nearly a year ago, showing a balance of just over $62,000, the culmination of years of deposits. Relief washed over me. The money did exist. But why were my parents acting as if they couldn't afford my education? Then I noticed something concerning. There were withdrawal slips paperclipped to the back of the statement. One from last July for $10,000, another from September for $15,000, a third from December for $20,000, and the most recent from February for the remaining balance of just over $17,000. The total my entire college fund emptied. My hands shook as I examined the withdrawal slips more carefully. In the memo line of each one in my father's precise handwriting were the words, wedding expenses. The room seemed to spin around me. They had taken my college fund money they had explicitly promised was for my education and spent it on Jackson's wedding. I continued searching through the files, looking for any explanation that might make this seem less like a betrayal. Instead, I found more disturbing information. There were credit card statements showing balances in the tens of thousands of dollars. A home equity line of credit had been opened 6 months ago, and a folder labeled Patterson Wedding contained quotes for everything from a $5,000 wedding cake to a $12,000 flower arrangement. The full picture slowly came into focus. My parents were spending far beyond their means to create an impression of wealth for the Pattersons, and my education fund had been sacrificed in the process. I carefully returned everything to its proper place, my mind racing. Should I confront them immediately? Wait and gather more information. Pretend I never saw anything. I texted my best friend Taylor. Need to talk ASAP, family emergency. Within the hour, I was sitting in Taylor's bedroom pouring out the whole story while she listened with increasing outrage. They did what? That's your money, Rosanna. They've been promising it to you your whole life. I know, I said, wiping away tears of frustration. I just don't understand how they could do this. They know how hard I've worked, how much getting into these schools means to me. Taylor's practical nature kicked in. You need to confront them directly. No more letting them avoid the conversation. And that evening when my parents returned, I tried to follow Taylor's advice. I found my mother alone in the kitchen preparing dinner. Mom, I need to talk to you about my college fund, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. She barely looked up from chopping vegetables. Not now, Rosanna. I'm very busy with dinner. It's important, I insisted. I need to know why the money that was saved for my education is now being used for Jackson's wedding. The knife clattered onto the cutting board. My mother's face paled as she finally met my eyes. What are you talking about? I saw the account statements, Mom. I saw the withdrawals for wedding expenses. That was my college money. For a moment, I thought she might admit the truth, might apologize. Instead, her expression hardened. You had no right to go through your father's papers. That's a serious invasion of privacy. And taking the money that was promised to me for my education isn't a serious breach of trust, I countered. My mother lowered her voice. You don't understand the pressures we're under. The Pattersons expect a certain level of presentation. This wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event for Jackson. And college is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. I got into MIT. Mom, MIT. Do you know how hard that is? There are other schools, more affordable options. You can go to state university just like Jackson did. You can live at home, get a part-time job. That's not the point. I was nearly shouting now. The point is that you and Dad promised me that money. You encouraged me to work hard for it. And then you took it without even telling me. You're being selfish, my mother said coldly. Jackson's future happiness is at stake here. Sometimes family means making sacrifices. So I'm expected to sacrifice my future for Jackson's wedding? How is that fair? My father walked in before she could respond. What's all this shouting about? My mother quickly explained, painting me as the villain for snooping through his office. My father's face darkened with anger. We'll discuss this later, he said dismissively. Right now, I need to call the venue about a change to the seating arrangements. And just like that, I was dismissed again. My future, my dreams, my sense of trust in my family, none of it mattered compared to the precious wedding. The tension in our house reached an all-time high in the following days. My parents spoke to me only when necessary, treating me like I had committed some terrible crime by discovering their betrayal. I overheard them arguing late at night, my father's voice rising as he insisted they had no choice, and my mother responding tearfully about keeping up appearances. Meanwhile, I threw myself into researching alternative funding options. I applied for additional scholarships, explored work-study programs, and calculated exactly how much debt I would need to take on to attend MIT without parental support. The numbers were daunting, but I refused to give up on my dream. As the pre-wedding festivities drew closer, I made a decision. I would confront my parents one more time, but not privately where they could dismiss me again. The upcoming family dinner, where both sets of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins would gather to celebrate the wedding, would be my opportunity to get answers. It was a risky plan, but I was out of options. May 1st was approaching rapidly, and I needed to make my college decision. More importantly, I needed the truth. The evening of the family dinner arrived warm and clear, a perfect late April night. My grandmother Eleanor was the first to arrive, giving me an extra tight hug, as if she sensed my distress. Aunts, uncles, and cousins followed along with my brother Jackson and his fiancée Alexis. My mother had gone all out with the dinner preparations, clearly trying to impress Alexis's parents, who would be arriving last. The dining room table was extended to its full length and covered with our best tablecloth. Crystal glasses that were rarely used sparkled in the light of the chandelier. I helped set the table mechanically, my stomach in knots as I rehearsed what I would say. Taylor had helped me practice encouraging me to be direct but calm, to focus on facts rather than emotions. The truth is on your side, she had reminded me that afternoon. Just stay steady and don't let them turn this around on you. By 7 o'clock, everyone had arrived. 18 people crowded around our dining table, passing dishes and making small talk. My father sat at the head of the table, beaming with pride as he discussed wedding details with Mr. Patterson. The venue alone cost nearly $30,000, he mentioned casually, as if this were a normal amount of money for our family to spend. Mr. Patterson nodded approvingly. Well worth it for the memories. Alexis has always dreamed of getting married there. I felt sick listening to them. $30,000, half of what should have been my college fund, gone on a venue for one day's celebration. The dinner progressed through appetizers and into the main course. My mother kept glancing at me nervously, perhaps sensing my unusual silence. Normally, I would have been engaged in conversation, asking my cousins about their lives or telling my grandparents about school. Tonight, I barely touched my food, waiting for the right moment. It came during a natural lull in conversation, just after my father had proposed a toast to the happy couple. Speaking of the future, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I wanted to ask about my college plans, Dad. The table quieted. My father's smile tightened. This isn't the time, Rosanna. Actually, I think it's the perfect time, I continued, forcing my voice to remain steady. The deposit deadline for MIT is next week, and I still don't know how I'm going to pay for it, since the $60,000 that was in my college fund has disappeared. You could have heard a pin drop in the dining room. My mother set down her fork with a clatter. Jackson looked confused. What college fund? My grandmother Eleanor asked sharply. David, Margaret, what is she talking about? My father cleared his throat. Rosanna's been going through my private papers without permission. She's misunderstood some financial matters that are none of her business. I think her college fund is very much her business, my Uncle Tom said slowly. You've been talking about that fund since she was little. I pressed on, emboldened by my uncle's support. I found the statements, Dad. I saw the withdrawals, all of them labeled wedding expenses. You took every penny that was supposed to be for my education and spent it on Jackson's wedding. Jackson's eyes widened. Wait, what, Dad? Is that true? My father's face flushed dark red. This is a family matter that should be discussed privately. We are family, my grandmother Eleanor said firmly. And I'd like an explanation. Margaret, did you know about this? My mother looked down at her plate. The wedding has had some unexpected costs. We had to make difficult decisions. So you decided to sacrifice Rosanna's future? Grandmother asked incredulously. The Pattersons looked increasingly uncomfortable. Mrs. Patterson leaned over to whisper something to her husband. I don't understand, Jackson said, turning to our parents. You told me you were covering the wedding costs from your savings and business profits. You never said anything about using Rosanna's college money. We're already doing so much for her, my father suddenly shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Ungrateful girl. Do you know how hard we've worked to raise you, to give you everything? You promised me that money, I said, fighting back tears. I worked so hard because you said education was the key to success. You lied to me. My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. We're already doing so much for you, he repeated, his voice rising. You have a roof over your head, food on your plate, and this is how you repay us, by humiliating us in front of everyone. Before I could respond, he strode around the table to where I was sitting. I thought he was going to continue yelling, but what happened next shocked everyone. His hand came up and struck my cheek with enough force to snap my head to the side. The slap echoed in the suddenly silent room. David! My grandmother gasped. I sat frozen, my hand rising slowly to my stinging face, unable to believe what had just happened. My father had never hit me before. Never. Tears welled in my eyes, not from the physical pain, but from the absolute betrayal of that moment. In front of our entire family, in front of the Pattersons, my father had struck me for simply asking about money that was promised to me. You ungrateful little... My father started, but Jackson was already on his feet. Dad, stop. What the hell are you doing? The room erupted in voices. My mother trying to calm my father. Jackson standing protectively near me. Grandparents and aunts expressing shock. The Pattersons whispering urgently to each other. I couldn't bear it another second. I stood up, my chair falling backward onto the floor. I have never been anything but a dutiful daughter, I said, my voice shaking. I've maintained perfect grades. I've never gotten into trouble. I got into one of the best universities in the world. And this is what I get. In return, my future stolen and a slap in the face. Without waiting for a response, I grabbed my purse from the hall and walked out the front door. I could hear my name being called behind me, but I didn't look back. I got into my car, an old Honda my grandmother had given me when she upgraded, and drove away, tears streaming down my face. I had nowhere to go except Taylor's house. Her parents welcomed me without question when they saw my tear-stained face and the red mark on my cheek. Taylor's mother, a nurse, got me an ice pack while Taylor led me to her bedroom. They took it all, I sobbed as I told her what happened. And then he hit me. In front of everyone. Taylor held me while I cried, her parents periodically checking on us and offering quiet support. It was in that moment, surrounded by a family not my own, yet showing me more care than my parents had in months, that I realized the depth of the betrayal. This wasn't just about money. It was about value. In my parents' eyes, Jackson's one-day celebration was worth more than my entire future. I was expendable, secondary, an afterthought. As the initial shock began to fade, replaced by a dull, throbbing pain in both my heart and my cheek, my phone began to light up with messages. Jackson apologizing profusely. Aunts and uncles expressing outrage at my father's behavior. Grandmother Eleanor saying she was coming to see me the next day. Notably absent were any messages from my parents. I spent the night at Taylor's house, her parents insisting I take their guest room rather than return home. The next morning, my phone showed missed calls from various family members, but still nothing from my parents. It was Jackson's text that hit hardest. Ro, I'm so sorry about last night. I had no idea they were using your college fund for the wedding. Dad says there's more to the story and you don't understand the whole financial situation. But that's no excuse for how he reacted. Are you okay? Where are you staying? I didn't respond immediately. The fact that Jackson was already relaying excuses from our father, rather than simply condemning his actions, stung nearly as much as the slap had. Around noon, Grandmother Eleanor arrived at Taylor's house. At 74, she was still fiercely independent, driving herself everywhere, and speaking her mind without hesitation. Taylor's parents discreetly gave us privacy in their living room. "Oh, my dear girl," she said, taking my hands in hers. The bruise on my cheek had developed overnight, a visible reminder of my father's loss of control. "This is unforgivable." "Did you know," I asked, "about the college fund?" She shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. If I had known they were even considering such a thing, I would have stopped it immediately." Then my grandmother revealed something that shifted my understanding of the situation even further. "Your parents are in serious financial trouble, Rosanna. Far worse than they've let on to anyone in the family." She explained that my father's insurance business had been struggling for years. The recession had hit them hard, and they'd lost several major clients to larger agencies with better rates. Rather than scale back their lifestyle, my parents had begun living on credit, maintaining appearances at all costs. "The wedding has pushed them to the breaking point," Grandmother said. "They've taken out second and third mortgages on the house. Your father has been borrowing from his life insurance policy. They're drowning in debt, trying to create this elaborate facade for the Pattersons." "But why not just have a smaller wedding? Why sacrifice my education?" My grandmother's eyes were sad. "Pride, appearances. Your father especially has always defined himself by how others perceive him. The Pattersons' wealth threatens his sense of adequacy." This new information didn't excuse what my parents had done, but it helped me understand the desperation behind their actions. They weren't just being callous about my future. They were panicking about their own present circumstances. "What should I do now?" I asked, feeling utterly lost. "First decide about college," my grandmother said practically. "Then we'll deal with your parents." Over the next week, I stayed with Taylor, only returning home briefly to collect clothes and essentials when I knew my parents would be out. My mother had left tearful voicemails, but they were more about her embarrassment over the scene at dinner than genuine remorse for taking my money or my father hitting me. My father sent a single text: "When you're ready to apologize for your behavior, we can discuss your future." The audacity of expecting me to apologize left me speechless. With May 1st approaching, I made my decision. I couldn't afford MIT, not without taking on crushing debt that would follow me for decades. Instead, I accepted a spot at State University, which had offered me a substantial scholarship. It wasn't my dream school, but it had a solid engineering program, and combined with additional scholarships I had applied for, it would be financially manageable. The day before my high school graduation, I finally spoke with Jackson by phone. "The wedding is still on," he told me, sounding conflicted. "Alexis wanted to postpone after what happened, but Mom and Dad convinced her it would cause more problems than it would solve. Too many non-refundable deposits." "Of course," I said bitterly. "Heaven forbid they lose the deposits they paid with my future." "Ro, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I've tried talking to them, but they just say you don't understand the sacrifices they've made for our family." "Are you asking me to come to the wedding?" I asked directly. His hesitation told me everything. "It would mean a lot to me, but I understand if you can't." "I'll think about it," I said, though in my heart I already knew I wouldn't attend. How could I celebrate while my future had been compromised for the very event being celebrated? My high school graduation was a bittersweet affair. I had been named valedictorian, an honor that once would have made me proud, but now felt hollow knowing I wouldn't be attending my dream school. My parents attended the ceremony but sat apart from grandmother Eleanor, who had come with Taylor's family to support me. When my name was called to receive my diploma, I heard Taylor's parents cheering loudly from the audience. My own parents applauded politely as if I were any other student and not their daughter. Afterward, in the crowded gymnasium, my father approached awkwardly. "Congratulations," he said stiffly, as if speaking to a stranger. "We're proud of you." "Are you?" I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "Rosanna," my mother interjected. "People are watching. Can we please not do this here?" That was all that mattered to them, what people would think, how things appeared. Not how I felt, not what they had done to my future. "I'm staying with grandmother until college starts," I told them. "I've accepted the scholarship at State." Relief flashed across my father's face, quickly masked. That's a sensible decision. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they had taken from me. Just satisfaction that I had chosen the less expensive option that wouldn't require any further financial contribution from them. I walked away to join Taylor's family, who enveloped me in genuine hugs and congratulations. The contrast couldn't have been more stark, these people who had no obligation to me showing more care and support than my own parents. As May turned to June, I settled into my grandmother's guest room and found a summer job at the university bookstore. The wedding date approached, and against my better judgment, I decided to attend, not for my parents, but for Jackson, who, despite his flaws, had always been a loving brother. Little did I know that the wedding day would bring an even more painful revelation and force me to make the final break from my parents' toxic influence. The Patterson-Walsh wedding was held at Lakeview Country Club, a prestigious venue with manicured gardens and a ballroom that overlooked the water. From the moment I arrived, the extravagance was overwhelming: ice sculptures, champagne fountains, an 8-piece orchestra, and floral arrangements taller than me at every turn. I wore a simple blue dress I had purchased with my bookstore earnings. Nothing fancy, but appropriate for a family member who wasn't part of the wedding party. My grandmother had offered to buy me something new, but I had refused. "I'm done with appearances," I told her. We arrived just before the ceremony was set to begin, slipping into seats near the back. My parents were at the front, my father in a tuxedo that must have cost thousands, my mother in a designer dress and new jewelry. They looked like strangers to me. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. Jackson looked handsome and happy, and Alexis was radiant in her custom gown. When they exchanged vows, promising to support each other through good times and bad, I felt a pang of genuine happiness for my brother. Despite everything, I wanted him to have a good life. It was at the reception that things began to unravel. My parents had arranged the seating so that grandmother Eleanor and I were at a table far from the main wedding party, with distant cousins we barely knew. The message was clear: we were to be kept away from the Pattersons and other important guests. "Charming," my grandmother commented dryly as we found our table cards. "At least we won't have to make small talk with your father." Several relatives approached me during the cocktail hour, some awkwardly avoiding any mention of the family dinner incident, others expressing quiet support. My Aunt Julia, my father's sister, hugged me tightly. "I've never seen David act like that before," she whispered. "It's not right what they did with your college fund. Not right at all." As I made my way to the bar for a soda, I overheard a conversation between two of my father's business associates. "David must be doing better than he lets on," one man said. "This wedding must have cost a fortune." "He told me they spent nearly 100,000, the other replied. "Said it was worth every penny to cement the relationship with the Pattersons. Smart business move, connecting with a family like that." I froze. $100,000. Far more than even my college fund could have covered. Where had the rest come from? Throughout the evening, I collected more pieces of the puzzle. My mother's friend mentioned the gorgeous renovations my parents had supposedly done on their house renovations I knew hadn't happened. A distant uncle referred to my father's new vacation property on the lake. A complete fabrication. My parents weren't just using my college fund. They were actively lying to everyone about their financial situation, creating an elaborate illusion of prosperity while sacrificing my future in the process. The final revelation came when I accidentally stumbled upon my father in a quiet hallway off the main reception area. He was on his phone speaking intently to someone about the new loan. "Yes, we'll secure it against the business," he was saying. "The interest rate is high, but it's just temporary. Once Jackson starts working for his father-in-law, we'll have connections to better financing options." So that was the plan. My father was banking on Jackson's marriage to solve their financial problems. My brother was being used, just as my college fund had been, as a tool to maintain appearances and potentially save them from financial ruin. I must have made a sound because my father turned and saw me. His face hardened. "Eavesdropping again?" he asked coldly. "Just passing by," I replied. "But it seems like you're counting on Jackson to save you from your bad financial decisions." "You don't understand adult matters." He dismissed me. "Your brother is being strategic about his future. He understands the importance of connections and appearances. Unlike me, who just worked hard and earned my way into a top university." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. My father's expression changed then, revealing something I had never clearly seen before: his fundamental belief that Jackson, as his son, was simply more valuable than I was as his daughter. Engineering isn't a realistic career for a woman, Rosanna. Once you get married and have children, that expensive education would be wasted anyway. Jackson needs to establish himself in business. He's investing in his future. And what about my future? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "State University is perfectly adequate for someone in your position," he replied dismissively. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to our guests." I watched him walk away, suddenly understanding with perfect clarity that nothing would ever change. In my parents' eyes, I would always be secondary. My achievements discounted, my dreams considered expendable. The realization was both painful and oddly freeing. If they would never value me properly, then I no longer needed to seek their approval or support. I could build my own life, make my own choices, free from their warped value system. I returned to the reception hall just in time to hear my father giving an emotional toast to the newlyweds. He spoke of sacrifice, of family values, of investing in the future of the next generation. Each word was like a knife, knowing that he had sacrificed my future to create this spectacle. When the toasts concluded and the dancing began, I made my way to where Jackson and Alexis were greeting guests. "Congratulations," I said, hugging my brother. "I wish you both happiness." "Thanks for coming, Roy," Jackson said, genuine affection in his voice. "It means a lot." Alexis leaned in to hug me as well. "Jackson told me everything," she whispered. For what it's worth, my parents were horrified when they found out about the college fund. They would have helped if your parents had just been honest about their situation. That confirmed what I had suspected: the Pattersons weren't demanding this extravagance. It was my parents' pride and fixation on appearances driving everything. I took a deep breath, knowing what I needed to do next. I walked directly to where my parents were chatting with Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, interrupting their conversation without apology. "I'm leaving now," I announced. "But before I go, I wanted to thank you both publicly." My mother's eyes widened in alarm. "Rosanna, this isn't the time." "Actually, it's the perfect time," I continued calmly. "I want to thank you for teaching me an invaluable lesson about priorities and honesty." The Pattersons looked confused. Other nearby guests had stopped to listen. "You've shown me that appearances matter more than integrity, that promises can be broken when they're inconvenient, that daughters are worth less than sons." And my voice remained steady, though my heart was racing. "Most importantly, you've taught me that I can only truly count on myself." My father stepped forward, his face darkening with anger. "That's enough." "No, it's not enough," I replied. "Everyone here should know that this beautiful wedding was paid for with my education fund. $60,000 that was promised to me, saved for my college education, taken without my knowledge or consent to create this illusion of wealth and status." Gasps and murmurs spread through the gathered guests. The Pattersons looked mortified. "But it's okay," I continued, addressing the shocked faces around me, "because I've learned that my worth isn't determined by my parents' support or lack thereof. I'll still become an engineer. I'll still create the future I've worked for. It'll just be on my own terms now." I turned back to my parents, whose expressions mixed rage and humiliation. "Congratulations on the beautiful wedding. I hope it was worth the price, and I don't mean the money." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away head high, despite the tears threatening to spill. Grandmother Eleanor met me at the exit, taking my arm. "I have never been prouder of anyone in my life," she told me as we walked to her car. "That took tremendous courage." As we drove away from the country club, I looked back once at the twinkling lights and elegant facade. Like my family, it was beautiful on the surface, but built on deception underneath. I had lost my dream school and my relationship with my parents in one devastating blow. But I had gained something perhaps more valuable: The knowledge that I could stand on my own, speak truth to power, and forge my own path forward, unburdened by false expectations and conditional love. The days following the wedding were both the hardest and most liberating of my life. My phone exploded with messages from family members who had witnessed my speech, some critical of my causing a scene, others expressing support and even offering financial help for my education. Jackson called the day after, his voice tight with emotion. "The Pattersons are furious with Mom and Dad," he told me. "Not about the wedding itself, but about the lying and using your college fund. Mr. Patterson actually offered to help with your tuition." I was touched, but declined the offer. "This isn't your responsibility to fix Jackson or the Pattersons. I appreciate the gesture, but I need to do this my way now." For the first 2 weeks after the wedding, I fell into a deep depression. The betrayal, the public humiliation, the loss of my dream school. It all caught up with me at once. I barely left my grandmother's guest room, sleeping too much during the day, and lying awake at night replaying everything in my mind. Grandmother Eleanor gave me space, but ensured I ate regular meals. "Healing isn't linear," she would remind me. "Some days will be better than others. That's normal." Taylor visited, often bringing ice cream and silly movies to distract me. "MIT doesn't know what they're missing," she would say. "They're lost that they won't have the brilliant Rosanna Walsh revolutionizing engineering from their labs." Slowly, I began to emerge from the darkness. I started by setting small daily goals: take a shower, go for a walk, read an article about engineering innovations. Each accomplishment, no matter how minor, helped rebuild my sense of agency and control. Ms. Williams, my supportive teacher, connected me with a therapist who offered reduced rates for students. Those weekly sessions became crucial to my recovery. Dr. Liang helped me understand that my parents' behavior reflected their own insecurities and flawed values, not my worth as a person. "You can acknowledge the pain they caused while still building your own path forward," she explained. "Their actions define them, not you." By mid-July, I was ready to take more concrete steps toward my future. I contacted State University's engineering department and arranged to meet with an advisor to discuss my course options. Professor Martinez, the department chair, recognized my name from my application materials. "We were surprised and delighted when you accepted our offer," she told me during our meeting. "With your qualifications, we assumed you'd be heading to one of the coastal schools." I briefly explained my situation, not dwelling on the details, but acknowledging that financial circumstances had changed my plans. "Well, their loss is our gain," Professor Martinez said firmly. "And I want you to know that while we may not have MIT's endowment, we have several professors who came from there, and our internship program has placed students at top engineering firms across the country." For the first time since discovering the empty college fund, I felt a genuine spark of excitement about my future. Maybe this detour wasn't the catastrophe it had initially seemed. In August, Grandmother Eleanor made an announcement that further brightened my outlook. "I've been thinking about my savings," she told me over breakfast. "I plan to leave most of it to you in my will anyway, but I think it would do more good in your hands now than sitting in my account earning minimal interest." She handed me a check for $15,000, not enough to transfer to MIT, but enough to significantly reduce the loans I would need to take out. "Grandma, I can't accept this," I protested. "What about your retirement?" She waved away my concern. "My pension covers my needs, and I still have plenty set aside for emergencies. This is an investment in something I truly believe in you." Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents remained fractured. My mother sent occasional texts, superficial messages about the weather, or asking if I was eating properly, never acknowledging the deeper issues between us. My father didn't contact me at all until late August, when he sent a single message: "Your room is still here if you want to come home before school starts." No apology, no mention of the college fund or the slap. Just an assumption that I would eventually come crawling back as if nothing had happened. I didn't respond. Jackson and Alexis returned from their honeymoon and made efforts to maintain a relationship with me separate from our parents. We would meet for coffee or lunch, carefully avoiding discussion of the wedding or my confrontation. "Dad's business is struggling even more now," Jackson confided during one of these meetings. Several clients left after hearing rumors about the financial situation. The Pattersons have distanced themselves too. I felt no satisfaction at this news. Despite everything, I didn't want my parents to suffer. I simply wanted them to recognize what they had done and take responsibility for it. That reckoning never came. As the summer drew to a close and I prepared to begin my freshman year at State University, I realized I needed to accept that my parents might never acknowledge their betrayal or apologize for their actions. My healing couldn't depend on their recognition of their wrongs. Move-in day at the university was bittersweet. Grandmother Eleanor drove me to campus, her car packed with the essentials for my dorm room. As we unpacked, I couldn't help but think how different this scene was from what I had imagined throughout high school, the prestigious campus of MIT. Perhaps my parents proudly helping me settle in celebrating this milestone achievement. Instead, I was at State, grateful for my grandmother's support, but acutely aware of the absence of my parents on this important day. I keep thinking about what could have been, I admitted to grandmother as we made up my bed with new sheets. MIT, the robotics lab, I researched the professors I wanted to work with. She sat beside me on the newly made bed. Those thoughts are natural. But remember, engineers are problem solvers above all else. You've been given an unexpected problem, and you're solving it with grace and determination. Her words struck a chord. Yes, I was an engineer at heart, analyzing situations, finding solutions, building new paths forward when the original ones were blocked. That perspective shift became my mantra throughout freshman year. When courses were challenging, when student loans weighed heavily on my mind, when I saw classmates whose parents visited regularly or sent care packages, I reminded myself this is just another problem to solve. I threw myself into my studies with renewed purpose, earning top marks and catching the attention of my professors. I joined the university's robotics team and helped design a project that won a regional competition. I applied for and received additional scholarships based on my first semester performance. By the end of freshman year, I had secured a paid summer internship at a biomedical engineering firm, a position usually reserved for juniors or seniors. The experience confirmed that I had chosen the right field, regardless of which university's name would ultimately appear on my diploma. My relationship with my parents remained distant, but evolved over time. After nearly a year of minimal contact, my mother reached out with a tentative invitation to dinner. Just the two of us, she specified. Over pasta at a neutral restaurant, halfway between campus and my parents' home, she offered the closest thing to an apology I would ever receive. We made mistakes, she said, carefully stirring her soup. Your father and I were caught up in appearances, in what other people would think. The wedding became everything. We lost perspective. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of the damage done, but it was something. She didn't mention the college fund specifically or my father's violent reaction at the family dinner, but there was genuine regret in her eyes. The house is being foreclosed on, she added quietly. The business, too. Your father's meeting with bankruptcy attorneys next week. The financial house of cards had finally collapsed completely. I felt a complex mixture of emotions, sympathy for their difficult situation, vindication, that the truth had finally caught up with them, sadness for the family we might have been if honesty and genuine values had guided their choices. I'm sorry that's happening, I said sincerely, but maybe it's a chance to rebuild on a more honest foundation. My relationship with my father took longer to thaw. It wasn't until my junior year, after he and my mother had moved to a small apartment and he was working for another insurance agency as an employee rather than owner, that we had our first real conversation. I was wrong, he said simply when we met for coffee. The words clearly cost him greatly. Admitting mistakes had never been his strong suit. About the money, about hitting you, about a lot of things. It wasn't the detailed apology I might have once needed, but by then I had built enough of my own life that his approval or acknowledgement no longer determined my sense of self-worth. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It matters to hear it. As for Jackson and Alexis, their marriage weathered the financial storm and family drama. They eventually moved to another state where Jackson took a position with a company unrelated to the Pattersons, determined to make his own way rather than relying on family connections. "You inspired me," he told me during a rare visit home during my senior year. "Watching you stand up to mom and dad build your own path, it made me realize I needed to do the same." Today, as I prepare to graduate with honors from State University's engineering program, I look back on that devastating discovery of my emptied college fund with surprising gratitude. While I still believe what my parents did was wrong, a betrayal of their promise and an expression of deeply flawed values, I recognize that their actions forced me to develop strength, resilience, and independence I might never have found otherwise. I've accepted a position with a leading biomedical engineering firm that specializes in prosthetic development work that will make a genuine difference in people's lives. The salary will allow me to gradually pay off my student loans, and the company offers a tuition assistance program for employees pursuing advanced degrees. My parents will attend my graduation ceremony next month. Our relationship remains a work in progress, civil, but not close, healing, but not healed. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or excusing harmful actions. It simply means not allowing those actions to control my life or future choices. Looking back on that naive, trusting girl who discovered the missing college fund, I hardly recognize her. In her place stands a woman who understands her own worth, who knows that education and success come in many forms, and who recognizes that the most valuable lessons sometimes arrive through painful experiences. The $60,000 my parents took was a steep price to pay for these lessons. But the woman I've become, the strength I've discovered, and the authentic life I'm building, that's worth far more than any college fund. Have you ever had a moment when a painful betrayal eventually led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that setbacks don't define their future. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the path to our dreams takes unexpected detours, but that doesn't mean we won't reach our destination.